The US-Iran conflict is very complete, pretty much.
Is it?
That is, at least in the words of Trump. The Strait of Hormuz is clearing up, and inflation and interest rates are back in focus. Today, we'll break down what this means for oil, CPI, the Fed, and why Bitcoin may actually be stabilizing in the middle of all this. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Strategic Markets, where we try to give you a balance of technical and fundamental analysis all at once. And into our midweek session, I think we want to start off particularly with these words: the war is very complete, pretty much. Now, as funny as that sentence sounds, and reasonably childish, this particular sentence actually had a massive move into the market because when I saw this particular news report came out, guess what crude oil did? It was making this massive move up at the start of the week. And then after that, we actually had a reasonable, I would say near 31% move. And like this is a near like multi-billion, if not $1 trillion asset we're talking about over here, moving like that in the span of 24 to 48 hours. This is a massive move to look out for. And what did that actually also say? Well, as this particular war progresses and we're going on, oil movements have actually recently begun as well. We've been talking about the Strait of Hormuz for a while, which is where about 20% of oil exports come from around the world. And basically, the US eliminated about 16 mine-laying boats to basically let operations of oil tankers get through the Strait of Hormuz, which is definitely a better thing for export operations. Even though the price is holding up reasonably high, still at about $90 a barrel, this was definitely somewhat of beneficial news that's actually bringing down the price of oil because in Australia, it's $3 a liter right now. So it's really going high for us over here. Thankfully, I don't drive, so that's pretty good. But yeah, as I said, about 20% of oil exports go through the Strait of Hormuz. We've covered this before with about 38% China and 15% India. So how that goes for tariff negotiations in April with China for America is actually going to be a very interesting point of discussion, but this is definitely a hot topic. Very relevantly so, in this particular week, some things that we're looking forward to that's actually going to define the macro week ahead is first of all the US CPI number. So that is expected to come out most likely within about 48 hours. It says March 12th, but that's US time. So that's going to be about 2 days from now for us. Then we had the jobless claims and the trade balance that's going to tell us how the job market's reasonably going. And recently, to be honest, the jobs numbers in America is decreasing. That could be due to AI. That could be just due to actual manufacturing and things that are going on over there. But it's definitely something interesting to look out for the American economy. And lastly, in terms of the core PCE, Q4 GDP revisions, and basically job openings. So it's a pretty jam-packed week on the side with what's happening with America, Iran. What does that look like for rates and basically your mortgage interest rates in America? 99.4% actually still believe there's going to be no change in the rates, which leaves people in a bit more tougher position. Only 0.6 believe that it's going to drop. Like at about similar time last week, it was about 97.3. Now it's just completely dropped hard. So we can really see that people are erring to the side of caution, and they're saying that nothing, no risk on environments happening over here, and we're just sticking to the high interest rates. Talking about risk on environments, there's obviously we talk about crypto a lot over here. I am after tracking BTC for a while now in this particular Fibonacci range, we can basically see that BTC has been range bound sideways, which is definitely good considering it was 6 weeks downtrend. So it's not easy for anyone to have to stomach that much volatility downwards. So thankfully we have seen a very tiny green candle over here. Whether we confirm another green candle, that would be great. In the long term, I've said this before and last week as well, that we are currently maintaining an uptrend on the weekly chart and particularly on the monthly chart as well of BTC's price action. So I'm just kind of interested to see how this goes. We can see it's just wicking over here. I personally do believe we do have a bit of possible downwards price action to 62K. If not, we wick down to possibly 60K as well, even this particular month. Why do I think so? Is interestingly because when you look at the liquidation heat map for Bitcoin's trading positions, although we have a lot of liquidity that we can, break over here by going up to the 72K and 74K, and generally Bitcoin moves in the direction of liquidity, we also have some liquidity down over here at about 65, 64K. So whether we come down to stop everything out and then possibly have a move upwards and onwards, all I'm saying is in the as much as we want to be excited for this particular weekly candle forming on Bitcoin, be extremely vigilant and know that there is risk to the downside. We're going to talk a little bit also about the correlation of oil to BTC in a bit and what that could mean for moves with Steve. But for today's analysis, that is our thoughts on where Bitcoin is at. And lastly, something that we look at, which is the interest in altcoins and ETH BTC strength, that's just currently ranging sideways, and we're just gonna have to see how no confirmation of a risk on environment has currently been set. So expectation from this to move in any direction right now is just very minimal. But on that, I will pass it over to you, Steve, and see what your thoughts are.
Fantastic, mate. Thank you very much for all that. That is really amazing how it's all correlating together and all mixing together beautifully. And that liquidation heat map really does show it quite nicely in terms of the upper and lower range bounds as well there too. So absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for all that information. Let's share across the screen there, and we'll start with the biggest thing that's on everyone's mind at this point in time, and that really is Brent crude. We were
Mm,
discussing over the last couple of sessions in terms of the way that it was basically going parabolic all the way
mm,
through. And let's enlarge this now, and you can really see exactly what has been going on with that. And the biggest thing to really take a mention of was what we were recently discussing as well, especially in terms of the implied volatility ratio being very similar to what had happened previously with silver as well, that had been increasing dramatically. And then all of a sudden, with silver, we had that recent 30% drop. We've had literally the same kind of thing happening in essentially with Brent crude oil as well. Overall, we've had that massive increase, and you can see where the high of that went to just over 120. So take a look at that number up here in terms of the high there. It got to 120, and
mm,
then it's come back down. We were also talking about where it could potentially come back down to, and we were actually hypothesizing that it would come back down to the short-term moving averages being the yellow and the cyan lines, and also down to the volume profile area. Where did it come back to? Those exact areas. So that's where you can see where the actual wick down had come to. Interestingly enough, it's actually bouncing off that area right now as we speak. And on top of that as well, it's actually bouncing enough to actually pretty much come right back up to where it actually closed yesterday. Very interesting, isn't it? So
very much so.
these are the kind of things that actually happen with the markets all the time. Now, interestingly enough, we're currently with Brent crude around about the $90 level.
Mm,
What may happen with everything that's going on? Now, there's a lot of headlines going on. Okay, the war is complete or almost complete or whatever it is there. Let's see what does happen in terms of further headlines or whatever might occur. But if we form a new high here
mm,
above this level of what is it, 95.50, say, okay, $95.50. If we actually start trading above that, we've got a swing up.
mm.
Who knows where crude oil could potentially go from there? That could make things extremely interesting. And like you're alluding to, there are correlations between the Brent crude with the way the crypto is acting as well too,
I agree
right?
because if we were to have a look at this on
Hmm.
the weekly, this or on the daily, this has been consistently moving up for I'd say at least the last 6 weeks, while
Hmm.
Bitcoin actually has been correlating downwards for the last 6 weeks consistently.
Correct.
So if Bitcoin has if crude oil has one more move up or a consistent move up, then likely my scenario of holding the monthly support going down to let's say 58 or 60K, or at those liquidation levels at 62K is highly likely. So guys, just be on the lookout that if actually oil starts making a move up or has one more show of strength, Bitcoin could have that drop over here and have that inverse correlation.
Absolutely. And that's really important to keep in mind there as well, considering the fact that even over the last day, when we take a look at Bitcoin as well, the high of Bitcoin here was 71,800, as you can see at the top of the screen right now as well, too.
Hmm.
Considering the fact that that's actually tested once again that previous resistance line from May of 2024 being 72,800. So
Hmm.
it got back up to around about that area there, or even slightly underneath it, but wasn't able to actually maintain itself there. But the most important factor of all of this as well is the Ethereum aspect. If you take a look at where Ethereum got to as well, it got as high as 2,088 over the last day.
Hmm.
Beneath that magic number of 2101 we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. Okay.
Hmm.
It can't seem to get itself over that. Even though
Hmm.
for both Ethereum and Bitcoin, you can take a look, we're getting a swing up in both of those short-term moving averages, but we're not seeing much follow through. That's been a big thing there as well to keep an eye on there too. Another
Agreed.
aspect, if we want to take a think about something on a positive side aspect, is the fact that the banks, we've had a look at the bank index as well. The bank index is still in a pretty strong downtrend.
Hmm.
So that is a positive in relation to where crypto is going. But whether or not we're now getting a bounce off the 200-day moving average is an interesting thing here too.
Hmm.
Getting a strong wick from here being yesterday. And if this follows through and then basically manages to find its way above the short-term moving averages and potentially above the 150 and the 100-day moving averages, then that could also be a negative in terms of the situation for crypto as well. So there's a lot of different counter arguments that are going on here in one way or another that may form the story in relation to the way the crypto is being able to interact with, say, Brent Crude, as well as the banks as well. So a lot of different angles to be able to look at overall. Heading back to say the DXY, for instance, we can see that that's actually maintaining itself in terms of a consolidation at this point in time. So we've got some form of a risk element going on here as well. But overall, we've got some strength because, as you know from previous discussions we've had here as well on this channel, we've had a breakout that occurred breaking through the short-term moving averages as well as the 50 and the 100, 150 and the 200 there as well to get above all of those areas there. A
Hmm.
lot of strength in the dollar.
Hmm.
There's some big movements going on there too. Another big key area to keep an eye on are the bonds. The bonds in themselves have really been taking a slide ever since making, highs for the last, say, 3 months. Made a big breakout there, but then have not been able to maintain itself at all, especially when the dividend got paid. So as soon as that dividend got paid on the TLT, everything started sliding and has been sliding ever since for the whole of March. That corresponds with an increase in the the TNX being the yields. You increase the yields, that leads to pressure in terms of, say, the very, very rate sensitive um, Russell 2000 in particular, and then that leads to more and more pressure in relation to a lot of the indices. And that's what we've been seeing overall. So we've got a lot of these other different factors going on there as well. We can have a quick look through the indices as well. But in terms of, say, the Russell in particular, you can see that there's been a lot of pressure there as well too. But are we getting a bounce there as well? Very similar to what's going on with the banks. You can see that there's a bit of a wick going on there as well. So that's the Russell. The Dow Jones looks very similar in the grand scheme of things there as well. But on top of that as well too, you've got the SPY having a bit of a bounce there too. And interestingly, the Nasdaq, out of all honesty, is actually starting to look stronger, like we mentioned on the weekend as well. So that's one of out of the indices that's actually now trading above the short
Hmm.
moving averages as well as actually trading above the 150-day moving average. So we've got some really interesting dynamics overall. What's happening in terms of things there too. Last but not least, and we didn't cover this in the last video, and I do apologize for that. I only realized after we stopped trading. But gold and silver, we did not cover those.
Hmm.
But if we have a quick look at these two before we actually finish up for this particular presentation, but taking a look at gold, we're now starting to actually get a little bit more strength in relation to the precious metals again.
Hmm.
Very fascinating. People perhaps coming back into this, maybe they're starting to get a little bit worried in terms of all the crude oil aspects there and they're needing some flight to safety again. So essentially, we're starting to get above the short-term moving averages here in terms of the gold futures, as well as the gold ETF as well too. Very fascinating. More relative strength in gold compared to silver, though. Okay, we're starting to trade below that VWAP again, and
Mm,
attempting to get it back above it, but not really being successful, unfortunately, in relation to silver. And
we're making lower highs on the daily.
yeah, and the same with the silver ETF as well.
Mm,
So we're getting a lot of these different dynamics that are going on here, and quite a lot in relation to these dynamics indeed. So definitely a lot to be able to consider in relation to how everything's going overall. But when it comes to all of these things that are going on in relation to things, it's a matter of basically being able to say, okay, look, have a look and see what's going on in terms of various levels of strength that are actually occurring around the place. You can see that tech is getting stronger. You can see that certain areas are getting stronger in relation to various sectors that are happening overall there too. But you can also see areas of weakness. So looking at bonds in particular being a little bit weaker. So definitely keep an eye on those levels that are going on, like we're always saying here on the channel as well too, and basically see whether or not things are actually sticking along with your plan. And if not, you may want to be able to have a look at that in terms of your level of aggression, as well as those areas of your long-term aspects there as well.
mhm.
And I'll pass that back to you, my friend.
I think the key emotion that we're feeling these days, guys, is a lot of uncertainty. And I'm on with you on that board, considering, we may or may not be heading off into a war, irrelevant to the fact that it's World War III or not, but it's still a very tiresome situation. Oil is currently the main story.
Mm,
Precious metals are following a narrative, and then crypto is probably a signal of what the future direction is. If it holds, hopefully we have a decent bullish future, but until now, we are just in a lot of uncertainty. So it's been a pleasure being with you guys through these times. And, for however many that we support you guys, we really appreciate when you do drop that like or when you do leave a comment letting us know about our analysis. And even if we can do anything differently or something you'd like us to cover, we would greatly appreciate it. But other than that, thanks for coming to our midweek session. We will see you on the next one.